Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I want to tie up some loose ends. There have been things that I've talked about in podcasts in the past, and I just wanted to do some updates on them. And I want to start with the incident that I based about a month or so ago that was discussed by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on their Weaponized podcast, where there were Marines who back in 2021 had seen a triangle hovering over 29 Palms military training base in California, and now apparently that turned out to be nothing, that it was flares, according to reports. Anyway, there was an article that was put out yesterday by Christopher Sharp in the Liberation Times, and the headline reads, "Case solved, newly uncovered details point to triangular 29 Palms UFO being flares." And I'm going to read just a little portions of this article. It says, "New information acquired by reporter John Greenwald has shed new light on a reported unidentified anomalous phenomena case from April 20th, 2021, witnessed by Marines from Camp Wilson in 29 Palms, California. Marines stationed at the base captured and provided footage indicating what seemed to be an unidentified object with 5 lights and a triangular outline." Now, before I go on with this, I just want to point out that when I initially reported on this, I guess it was about a month or so ago, I didn't think that this was something that we should all be focused on. I thought that this took the focus away. You know, a lot of times I talk about how the government, the Pentagon, uses shiny objects to take our attention away from the more important aspects of this phenomena, and sometimes we do it to ourselves. Sometimes we in the UFO community present the shiny object to ourselves, and then we're not looking at the grand prize that we should be looking at. And I think this is one of those cases. I thought so at the outset. I didn't think there was much to it. There wasn't a lot of evidence, and now based on this reporting, it looks like it's most likely flares. And so it did turn out to be nothing, and we turned our focus onto it. A lot of us did. You know, I'm not saying, you know, I do this myself sometimes. Maybe sometimes I'm pointing a shiny object in my own face and I'm saying, "Hey, look at this. Hey, dummy, look at the shiny object," instead of looking at what you should be talking about. Maybe I do that to myself sometimes too. But I think that this was definitely one of those cases that we hurt ourselves, because then you had debunkers going on a heyday. Everyone was talking about this for a week or a couple of weeks. It was just a big, much ado about nothing, basically, in the end. And anyway, of course, Greenwald, he filed the Freedom of Information Act request, or FOIA, and he received it. It was granted, and it's, according to this article, which is written by Christopher Sharp, by the way, who's as pro Lou Elizondo, pro Jeremy Corbell, pro Christopher Mellon and George Knapp as you could possibly get, pro David Grush as you possibly get, and he's telling you here in this article that it seems like it's was just nothing. It was flares. And he says here, the new information provided by Greenwald shows images and footage from the night of April 20th, 2021, which appears to depict 5 flares in a similar formation captured by the Marines on the same night. UAP researcher Dave Beatty, who also made a Freedom of Information Act request, searched through detailed logs of a training exercise conducted at the time of the sighting. After analyzing the data, Beatty wrote, "The usage of parachute-retarded illuminating flares fired from Super UE helicopters and the Haida-70 rocket system by the Marines seems to explain the images the other group of witnesses Marines the other group of witness Marines from Camp Wilson filmed. It's possible that they were not briefed on the operation or confused by the appearance of the flares over the mountains." So there you go. There's really not much to say about this other than it's most certainly flares. That's what it looks like. And again, I didn't really think that the visual, the photographic evidence was really that compelling. I mean, it was something, I guess. You had a bunch of people saying that. And you still actually have some people saying that. One of the Marines actually spoke to Liberation Times, who was present at the time. He doesn't. So what the report is saying is that there were smoke trails. These smoke trails were getting illuminated by the flares, and that's what confused the Marines. But this guy here, speaking on condition of anonymity, says he didn't believe the shape could be caused by smoke trails, and is still searching for other explanations. And here's a direct quote from this anonymous source. He says, "We were not briefed beforehand by any higher-ups about any training going on at the time. We were not offered an explanation afterwards either. I just know we had photos showing a shape, and other Marines said they could see a shape with their own eyes. In the photos released with the FOIA, you can see that the smoke trails were above the lights and remained there. That can't be an explanation on why a shape appeared to us beneath the lights. Again, I don't think we're going to get anywhere with this one. Yeah, I would say that it would be best for us to focus on other things. For instance, I've been receiving a lot of messages today from one of my followers, Saywan P. He's always contacting me on Twitter, and he's letting me know about all the things that are going on coming up at the end of this month. He's talking about how the House Oversight Committee is going to have a hearing at the end of this month with some whistleblowers. He said it looks like there's going to be 6 people, according to Burchett, 2 scientists, 2 pilots, and 2 whistleblowers. So that should be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. So that's another thing to be looking forward to. And something else I think we should be looking forward to is on July 29th, if you remember, there's going to be a presentation by the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, or SCU, and they intend to reveal images and video evidence of a mothership, of an apparent extraterrestrial mothership that was witnessed by 5 pilots over the North Pacific Ocean. And that's going to be something that's going to be talked about on July 29th, and I'm looking forward to that presentation. And I'll just a reminder here, this is what this organization released earlier this year. It says they're going to talk about during this. It's going to be on Saturday, July 29th, this event, and as part of that event, they're going to be talking about a very large UAP that was crossing the North Pacific. It was observed by 5 pilots, and it has 2 photos and a video that they're going to show us. And according to the abstract here from their website, it says, we describe a non-military observation of UAP by multiple observers with 2 cell phone photos and a video. The observations are inexplicable on the basis of current human technology because the craft was at least a mile long, glowing against the dark sky, and was moving at about 2,000 miles per hour with no aerodynamic supporting surfaces. There are no corroborating radar or other observations. Upper limits are placed on the gravitational lensing of background field stars in the vicinity of the craft. Future observations of this kind may possibly be used to unambiguously identify extraterrestrial craft and to constrain their propulsion mechanism. And it also says, prior to the observations of this large craft, 4 or 5 orbs or lobes were seen to maneuver over angles of 5 to 10 degrees in seconds and then go into formation before assembling into the larger craft or else going inside it. So I am really looking forward to seeing that. So in addition to hearings in the House, with whistleblowers, scientists, and others, we're going to get this. This is a separate thing, and this will be on a weekend, on a Saturday. So I am very much looking forward to that. I'd like to see some new evidence of alien mothership presented. That would be great. Okay, now moving on. I want to talk about. I get a lot of comments from different people. A lot of people who follow me, regular commenters too. A lot of them I see comments from you guys over time and time again, all the time, just about, on Spotify and on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, which is Quirk Zone, and I present the show Extraterrestrial Reality on there. I get a lot of comments on there, and I get a lot of comments on my Spotify channel, which is UFO Extraterrestrial Reality. So I receive a lot of comments from a lot of different people. There are a lot of people who participate in the polls that I run on there, and on Spotify. I really appreciate that. It always gives me something interesting to talk about. But there are a lot of comments, and I see them all the time, and I feel like I look at these comments, and I feel like I wish I could just keep talking. Right? I want to continue the discussion. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. So I put a bunch of different comments together. From the last 3 or 4 episodes. I think it's 4 episodes here, and I'm going to go through them and talk about each comment. Because I think, again, there's a lot of good points that are made in these comments a lot of times, and I want to say more. Sometimes I'll respond to a lot of comments, but I want to talk more about them right here on my show. Now, for the most recent episode, Praying Mantis Aliens, UFOs in Water, and Vegas Alien Investigator Cries Hoax, From Spotify, I received a comment from Fred. Fred's a regular commenter. And he says, during that episode, of course, I was talking about the praying mantis aliens. They seem to be the ones apparently in charge of the little grays, the tall grays, the reptilians, according to some information that has been culled from different researchers out there. But what he says here, he says, as a 6-year-old boy, I messed with insects, bumblebees in jars, etc. But any time I encountered a mantis, I always felt a need to be kind, as if one was hanging in a spider web, he would help it. And he never thought to harm it. And that's pretty true, because, I mean, they are magnificent looking insects, and they don't seem to be afraid. I mean, I remember, I'm sure I talked about this at one time on the podcast. One time, maybe 7-8 years ago, somewhere around there, I don't know. It's been some time. I was sitting outside on my porch, and praying mantis just hopped up on my leg, right on my thigh, just sitting there looking at me, moving its head back and forth like it was curious, just staring at me. And I mean, I could, of course, if I was a jerk, I could have easily just squished it to death, but I didn't. I just sat there and just looked at it, and it stayed there for a while. It was like interested in me. It moved around a little bit, just looking around. It completely trusted me. It was a really strange insect. I mean, they're really interesting insects. Again, like I was stating yesterday in that podcast, it's hard to imagine that these insects somewhere evolved into intelligent creatures. That it's mind-boggling, but I mean, we just don't know. We don't know. Now, I received another comment from somebody with regard to this. And this was on YouTube. This was from a follower named Pedro Talons 1422. And this is what this person says. It says, here's my hypothesis. I don't think they actually look like a mantis. I think they are something else. But since the victim looking at it has never seen anything like it, their brain interprets it as a mantis, sort of like in the Lovecraft stories. Cthulhu looks like a man with an octopus head and bat wings, but that's not really what he looks like. It's just the closest thing that your mind can compare it to. I think it's the same with the mantises. That could very well be the case, that maybe there's nothing else we could ever see that we can compare it with, and it really isn't an insect, or it really isn't an evolved praying mantis, or maybe it's something else. I thought that was an interesting comment, a very interesting contribution here to this discussion. And then I received another comment from Utah John 777, and he writes, he says, Professor Diana Pascola of American Cosmic describes two guys driving down the road. One clearly sees a 4-foot-tall gray alien in the middle of the road. The other clearly sees a 4-foot-tall owl in the middle of the road. Same object, different descriptions. This follows the Jacques Vallée train of thought that aliens and their craft can appear as whatever to meet their viewers' expectations. I'm sure all these alien, quote, types, end quote, have been seen, but which is the real form, if any? And he talks about, check out the cover of Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée. It shows a gray holding several different masks. Yes, I do. That is an interesting book cover. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe what we're seeing are different. Everyone that would see these things sees something different. That's another mind-boggling aspect to this. I mean, is it possible that these beings are they're open? When you see them, they open up some sort of, what you're seeing is not real, but they have some sort of technology that makes you see what your brain would thinks you're seeing, or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't make sense, but it seems like that could possibly be. And then another comment I received from a YouTube user, Aliendo9328, says, there was a movie in the 50s or the 60s, the Praying Mantis. Actually, no, that movie was called The Deadly Mantis, and it was from 1957. And it's not one of the best giant insect movies that come out of the 50s. I would say probably the two best ones was Them, What About the Giant Ants, and Tarantula, of course, about a gigantic tarantula on the loose. Actually, I was thinking about it after I did that yesterday's podcast. I was showing during that podcast, if you watch the video version of it, I had some little segments showing mantises out that I used, that I got off Shutterstock, that I was able to use in my podcast, and I was thinking, boy, this is basically life imitating art in a way. I'm talking about these praying mantises and what they do. You know, in those old movies, like in Them and Tarantula, or the Deadly Mantis. You know, there's always these scenes where a scientist is meeting with other officials, right, and showing a short film about the real ants, what real ants do, right? When they have footage of real ants or a real tarantula or a real praying mantis, and then the show the talk, so they talk about what we're dealing with here, and basically that's basically what I was doing yesterday when you think about it. And then another YouTube user, Mr. Vibrating, had some comment here about this. He says, not having read any books on the issue and relying only on the video captures and testimonies I've seen so far, I might hardly have noticed these insectoids but for their discussion here on Quirk Zone. I've seen mention of them in a few encounters perhaps, but if they are a higher tier of being common to the phenomenon, is it not more likely that there's still another layer of artifice drones bred for purpose? Development of general purpose intelligence is highly dependent upon powers of abstraction, in turn selected for by things like tool use and language. Being an apex predator is also commonly implicated, and mantis-like beings obviously tick that box. I'm not sure that's enough for them to develop language, maths, and science, however. There's got to be a good argument that humanoid features such as opposable thumbs and verbal communication are a necessary environment for selection of general intelligence to develop. Insectoids seem unlikely natural overlords, but ideal as worker drones, perhaps for handling the greys and keeping them under manners as you suggest. Given that we can already pack transistors more densely than cortical neurons, I suspect it's more likely the intelligence in control is also artificial, the result of a post-singularity technology no longer subordinate to organic life. It could be calling the shots from a distant galaxy, and we'd never actually encounter it. Just machines that were its roaming eyes and ears, and of course its slave armies. Maybe it manufactures golems and other cryptids on demand as casually as any other machinery from whatever local resources are available. I just don't see how insectoids could develop a technological civilization independently of intervention, whereas they perfectly fit the requirements of a subordinate clone army, just like the golems. Wow, that was a great comment, I thought. I thought it was worthy of sharing. Yeah, of course. Yeah, maybe there's some sort of artificial intelligence that's creating these things and sending them out to do their business, to do their work. I mean, that's maybe there is a hierarchy among these groups of beings, and maybe the mantis is just another. It's not the top of the food chain, but maybe there's other things above it. Maybe it's artificial intelligence. Maybe the mastermind behind this is somewhere 100 million miles deep in space, and we're not even close here. And maybe this is what they do. They just travel the planets and they do whatever they're doing, and then on the request of their creator. I mean, it's incredible, because it is incredible to think that praying mantises could develop like some people think they have developed. It's just hard to imagine. How is that possible? But I just don't know. It's too fantastic. I mean, there was somebody actually put a comment on there laughing about it, and I understand. It is something to laugh about. It's funny. There was another comment. I don't have it up here right now, but it is funny. It's incredible. It's fantastic when you sit back and think about it. It's like, how could that happen? But I guess, who knows? I mean, I mean, this could be, Mr. Vibrating could be right about this. It could be, it might not have been developed. It might not have evolved on its own. Something created these things, perhaps. And that's something to think about. And then for another recent episode for extraterrestrial waste evacuation theory, which where I was talking about how I just put out a theory there based on some of those comments that were provided by that anonymous molecular biologist on Twitter, or excuse me, on Reddit recently. I provided more speculation with regard to that, talking about maybe a lot of alien abductees talk about seeing these alien beings floating in tanks sometimes, and we always think, well, they're maybe that's how they get their nutrition, through the pores. Well, I was putting forward maybe that's not how they get their nutrition. Maybe that's how they excrete through their pores, because that's what this biologist was saying online. But anyway, I received some comments for that episode, and here's one from Kyle James Meller. He wrote, the difference between this was on the extraterrestrial waste evacuation theory. He says, and this was from Spotify, Kyle James Meller, 1990. He says, the difference between you speculating and this so-called microbiologist is you aren't claiming without proof that you are a molecular biologist and that you've worked for the government on alien beings. I say it's fake. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be, the guy could be totally fake. He just invented all of this. Someone who's obviously, if it's fake, it's probably somebody who's interested in this, who has knowledge on genetics and biology, is able to do something like this and put it out there. Yeah, I mean, it very definitely could be fake, and Kyle here thinks it is fake. Puck Starved wrote back, and this is from Spotify. He says, I am perplexed why most UFO sightings are seemingly coming from the USA or South America. Although some sightings are reported around the world, most come from all over the USA. Why is that? Now, I don't know about that. I haven't seen evidence of that. From everything I know, they're all over the world, everywhere. It's not just America or South America. There's many, many sightings in Europe and Russia. I mean, all different countries. China. I mean, it's not just the United States or South America. I mean, there are a lot of sightings. It seems like some people say that South America, Brazil, that area, seems like there seems to be a lot more sightings. We don't know why. But it seems to me that there are sightings everywhere, on the oceans, at the polar ice caps, everywhere. I mean, I don't know. I've never seen any data suggesting that it's mostly localized to United States and South America. I just don't know about that. But hey, I'd like to see more information with regard to that, if anybody has it. Okay, also from Spotify, Molly888 says, Linda Moulton Howe says the Greys absorb nutrients through their skin. That's a claim behind the cattle mutilation. They absorb the cow blood into their skin by rubbing it onto their arms. Well, yeah, I mean, of course, as I've always talked about before in the past, I believe, I've suggested this in the past, and again, that's a theory too, that they do absorb it through their skin, nutrients, perhaps the cattle blood mixed in with some other nutritious substances. We just don't know. It's all speculation. We don't know. And now, again, what I was saying in that episode, again, that's just pure speculation too. We just don't know. We don't know. We have heard of these reports of beings floating in tanks on craft. What that purpose is, we just can't say one way or the other, but we could speculate. Maybe it's for a dual purpose. Maybe that's how they get their nutrition through their skin, and maybe that's how they excrete through their skin while in these tanks. We just don't know. Anyway, moving on. There was another comment here from Ned1621 from YouTube. Okay, I did say something. I know it's probably, I try to be very careful. I try to keep my show rated PG, maybe. Like, maybe you could, if it was a movie, maybe it could be shown as a double feature in the drive-in along with the latest comic book Disney movie or something. I don't know. But I was talking about, one of the reasons why they do this is because why they might be designed this way, so they don't leave any evidence around. And during that episode, I talked about, it wouldn't do to have during an alien abduction, like say things weren't going the way they were supposed to go with the abduction, and somebody starts fighting back, and maybe if these beings had anuses and genitalia, then there could be accidents. And I said that it wouldn't do to have one of these extraterrestrials pinch a loaf and leave it on the floor there for someone to find, because that would constitute evidence. And Ned1621 pointed out, says, pinch the loaf. Jesus, I've never heard that before, Jim. Seriously, I'm busting my gut in tears laughing, man. But it makes sense. You don't want your workers taking a dump on the abductee's nice carpet, do we? Then the CIA would probably take the evidence too and lock it up and freeze dry it. Then when they produce evidence at a hearing, you get a dump in a plastic bag. Oh, there's your evidence. Just joking, he says. You don't want to be caught out of warp speed doing a hyper jump from one solar system to another. But anyway, yeah. I mean, that could be one of the reasons. But another thing I should have focused on more. I mean, that could be one of the reasons, right? But another thing I wanted to focus on more in that it does make it more. If a being is designed this way, right, it's more efficient, right? I mean, you wouldn't really have to feed them that much, probably. That's why they're designed so small. You wouldn't really have to feed them that much. It'd probably be a liquid diet or a paste or something like to that effect. And then they excrete through their pores. It's not only prevents any accidents from happening like I was talking about, but it's also very efficient. There's not much you need to provide to these things to keep them going. So I should have focused on that too a little bit more in that episode. And then another comment for that episode from another YouTube user, Bill7576. He says, I always thought the Greys would drink liquids like Ensure or something like that. I think you're onto something here with the waste evacuation hypothesis. I really wish someone like you were appointed to Arrow. I say that because you have critical thinking that most scientists today don't. Well, thank you very much, Bill. Yeah, I wish I was appointed to Arrow. That would be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? But maybe they would make me talk like a robot, like Sean Kirkpatrick during these hearings, and I wouldn't be able to reveal anything because they would make me sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I would become just like him. So, yeah. Anyway, well, moving on here. Now for an episode that was entitled Redditor alleges he studied aliens for government / Coltart says building hides giant UFOs. Or excuse me, giant UFO. From Spotify, a user, Primo Santeria, said, maybe Ross is mindful of the craft being seized by multinational interest / USA enemy if he disclosed the location. So yeah, of course, I was asking Ross during that episode, hey, why don't you just tell us at least where that place is? And Primo Santeria is saying, well, maybe there's a reason he doesn't want to say it because maybe he thinks that it will get seized by somebody. But I have to say, in response to that, he said that they built a building over it because they couldn't move it. It was too big to move. So that's why if it can't be moved, then why would there be any concern about somebody trying to seize it? So I think he should just say what the name of the location is. That would be beneficial to us all. And Killbot from Spotify says, how about Mr. Coltart being told information on UAP and isn't sharing? How does this make sense? Isn't the role of a UFO investigator to be transparent and pass on findings? Geez. Well, yeah, that was more or less my stance on this. I agree with Killbot on that one. Yes, I think he should. I mean, I understand you don't give the name of your anonymous sources. Of course you can't. You don't want to do that. But there are other people out there. If this is true, that means there are other people out there that would have to know the location, right? So what does it matter? I mean, you're not giving away anybody's name, right? It could be anybody, right? So why not just say the location? That's where I'm at with it. Another Spotify user, me, said, love the podcast, keep being you. In the past, you mentioned going back to the fishing spot where you saw the UFO. Is that still possible? Yeah, I want to. Yes, I want to try to do that at some point in the future. I've talked about that. It was at a place called Beach Mountain Lakes. I actually attempted to do that last October. I had some friends. This was, of course, the incident happened in 1994. It was a place called Beach Mountain Lakes where this happened. It was actually a pond off the lake, pretty much all by itself. Now, when I went to this place in October, that area where I had my UFO encounter apparently is no longer part of Beach Mountain Lakes. There's a lot of private homes and stuff built there. That's what it is. It's like a private gated community that's all situated around this big lake. Where I went fishing that time with my buddy, it was in August of 1994. It was at this little pond off the lake. And when I went there in October, I went there with two of my friends. We were gonna try to go there, right? And we couldn't get in. We got into Beach Mountain Lakes, but that part was blocked off, and there were cameras there. It's now owned by a private developer, and I want to try to get permission to go in there. I don't want to go sneaking in and get arrested for trespassing. I just can't do that. But I would love to go there and see that site again, because I haven't seen it now. It's almost 30 years. Yeah, actually, not this August, but next August will be the 30th anniversary of that. Okay, then I received, this was a comment from Shadow Walker 1717 from YouTube. And this is what he wrote with regard to that episode. He said, individuals who exhibit strong skepticism toward the UFO phenomenon and actively engage in systematic attacks against those who are interested in the subject may likely be individuals who are either paid trolls or online operatives involved in psychological operations, if not even maybe hybrids. It is difficult for me to comprehend why someone who does not believe in the UFO phenomenon and its associated elements would invest such significant time and energy in dismissing it. The rationale behind such behavior appears to be devoid of logical reasoning. Amen, Shadow Walker. And you know, that's the kind of points that I make on a regular basis when it comes to the skeptics on this. It seems like they'll twist themselves into pretzels. It doesn't make any sense to me. Their arguments many times are devoid of logical reasoning, just like you've intimated here. Okay, moving on. For the episode, whistleblower news: reptilian on plane, Vegas alien debunker dismantled. For one of my Spotify user, the boss of Danoff, wrote. He says, I miss your old episodes. UFOs are real. The what is settled. Quit yelling at Mick West and CNN. Let's discuss abductions, the one thing they won't. Let's speculate on who and why. Well, let me just say that I do, since that day, I mean, it's funny. I actually have been doing that. I mean, I don't like, I try to mix it up on this channel. I talk about what the debunkers are saying. I talk about what's going on in the news. I talk about old cases. I speculate on alien abductions and what they're doing here. There's all different kinds of different things I try to cover on this. There's so many different aspects to this phenomenon, and I'm fascinated by all of it. And I can't promise you that I'm not going to yell at Mick West and other debunkers in the future. I think it's important to point out their idiocy when necessary. Like, for instance, Michael Shermer recently, a longtime debunker, he made some ridiculous statements that I felt was necessary to respond on my show. And I try to mix it up here with everything, and I do focus on. I speculate a lot, as many people know. And I talk about what's going on in the news. And another thing is that recently it seems like there's been a lot of stuff happening in the news. In the past couple of months, it's hard to keep up with it all. Actually, I'm having trouble keeping up with it all. There's actually some things that I haven't even talked about. There's so much stuff going on. I can't talk about all of it. You got to try to keep your focus on some aspects of it, the more important aspects of it. And I am trying to do that. But at the same time, in the past, there have been times where there was no news at all, and I would talk about older cases, during those periods. Talk about older cases that interested me, personal experiences, speculate on what's going on here, the hybridization program, things like that. And I actually have done that since you've made that comment, since that comment was made. But yeah, I try to mix it up here. So. Okay, and I received another comment from Spotify user. Lamacidal said, I spent a good portion of tonight's show saying "get 'em" repeatedly. Awesome show, solid points. Okay, yeah. Now see somebody else listening to that show when I was talking about. There was someone who was for that episode. There was a debunker called The Truth Is. I don't know what his real name is, but he has a YouTube channel called The Truth Is, and so this person here liked what I was doing in that one. So I can't. It's hard to please everybody all the time. You just can't do it. So I try to just cover the whole phenomenon, the news, the speculation, whatever, old cases. I try to cover everything. My personal experiences. People get sick of me. I get a lot of comments from people who are sick of me talking about my personal experiences. And then the funny part about it is I get comments. I get emails actually from people sometimes too. I get a lot of emails from people in addition to comments from people who say, hey, could you talk about what you mention it sometimes, but you don't tell the whole story. They want me to tell the whole story. So there's all different people with all different desires and wants, and I'm trying to, I'm doing the best I could. That's all I can say. Let's see. And then I received, finally, here's the last comment I received for that episode. This was from Gray Owl. Gray Owl's one of my one of my biggest fans, because actually I'll leave a link to his website, or to his YouTube channel rather. He actually he actually makes videos, taking images of me, put me on the like things like the Starship Enterprise, along with military witnesses to UAPs. Shannon Scott and Rob Heatherly were on the Starship Enterprise drinking Coors beer, and there's bikinied alien space babes dancing around me. It's just it's really funny. It's really silly, and so you could check out his channel and some of the videos he's made that were inspired by my channel. They're funny. But anyway, he said with regard to this episode, nice to get this dum-dum stumbling around with his high school book report article. Seemed like the dum-dum demographic was settling down a bit, but just when you think maybe we have the dummies on the run, a fresh horde appears as ravenous and lusting to be intellectually slapped around as the last. Good on you for neutralizing this zombie with the same vigor that you apply to all dum-dum live fire. Thank you. So he was talking about how I basically debunked the debunker with regard to the Vegas alien story, and that could, yeah, I can't stand. I don't like when people put out when people try to debunk things and they don't have all the information at hand. I mean, regarding this guy, and the truth is, I mean, he actually stated in his debunking video that these people never filmed anything, which was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this guy just posted this video. I mean, this has been going on for a while now. It was talked for a couple of weeks. He did no investigation. I mean, there was a video. In fact, I've shown the video on my show numerous times. I had Scott Roeder on, the crime scene reconstruction expert, go over it and point out the potential extraterrestrial that could be seen there. So I mean, this guy did no research, but yet there's somebody out there that has 200,000 plus followers on YouTube, and I feel compelled to respond to these things because nobody else will. Nobody else is responding to these things, and so I feel like somebody has to, right? So that's why I'm doing that. I know some people get upset because I'm yelling at these debunkers sometimes, but I think it's absolutely necessary sometimes. I don't do it all the time. But I do it sometimes, and I felt it necessary to do it that time again. And in fact, just in the previous the most recent episode before this one, of course, I talked about the Vegas alien investigator, Doug Papa, who's the one who initially broke the story, and I thought he was calling it a hoax in his headline. I watched that whole video that he put out, an hour and 42 minutes long, and I was waiting for him to tell us. Show us the definitive evidence that shows it's a hoax, and it's not. He never did. It was just listening to this long-winded conversation that led nowhere in the end, really. I mean, for the most part. Yeah, I think it's necessary to point these things out when they happen. Somebody needs to do it. So that's what I've been doing. That's been part of this whole channel since I started it. So I'm going to continue to do that when the need arises. Anyway, I do want to say I do appreciate everyone that provides comments like this. And really, I want to talk about. There's so much more. I couldn't even get into them, or I'd be here. I'd probably have a 10-hour long podcast, and that would be too much. I'd probably lose my voice after about 2 or 3 hours. But I do appreciate it. There's just so much more ideas that come out of these comments all the time, and it gives them, great points a lot of times. So I really do appreciate it. So keep them coming. And hey, if you do have issues with me, I don't mind. Hey, bring them on. Let me know what they are, and I'll talk about them, and I'll at the very least take them under advisement. So yeah. But anyway, thank you again for joining me. Until next time.